-1. That's all process previous does. Further on down, we're going to have a function called newSlide, and it's just going to handle moving the newSlide in whatever direction you've told it to go. So we're saying we want to go backwards if we're in previous. You should be able to guess by now what's in process next. So I've copied and pasted, and now I'm deleting the negative, so it's just newSlide 1. You can guess by now that the work is actually done in newSlide. We're passing it in direction. So let's set up a variable called image count, which is caption text. Remember, that's our array of captions, dot length. So now we know how many images we should have, because the two really need to go in sync. Current image is set to current image plus direction. So when we come in, current image is whatever it's been saved as previously, and either we subtract 1 or add 1. If cur image is less than 0, that's not good. So we want to set cur image, in that case, to be image count minus 1. However, if cur image is too high, which means we made it all the way to image count, which we don't want to do, we want to start over again at the beginning and set cur image to be 0. And then all that's left to do is set document.get element by ID slideshow.source equals images slash slide image plus cur image plus dot JPEG. And lastly, set document.get element by ID image text dot inner HTML equal to caption text current image. And that's what there is to it. Let's save our file and see it in action. Go to our browser, reload this page, and now we have our captions. And we can click through. And for every image, there's a caption. And we can go back again. And it's a handy way to make people anywhere in the world look at slides from your summer vacation. And finally, next up is a style sheet changer. Another useful piece of JavaScript that you can add to any site is a style sheet changer. It's not uncommon for people to say that it's just too hard to read your site. The font is too small, or the font is too large, or it should be serif or sans serif. And it's hard to make all those people happy, especially when both of them need to sign off on the site and they disagree with each other. So with this style sheet changer, you're going to see how to make your site more accessible and more friendly. If you're following along with the exercise files, we're looking at Chapter 12, Example 5, script.html. In the HTML file, you see we have 3 links going to CSS files. There's script.css, which contains those CSS rules that we want to always apply to the page. Then we have another one called sansstyle.css that has a title of default. This is going to be our default style sheet. It's the one where if you've never been to the site before, it's what you're going to get. And then we have one more called serifstyle.css, and rel is set to alternate style sheet. So it's an alternate style sheet in that it is not loaded when the page loads. And it has a title of serif. The JavaScript-related part here is these 2 buttons in this form, where the first button has a value of small sans, class of type button, and an ID of default. And the second button has a class of type button 2, a value of large serif, and an ID of serif. Let's take a quick look at the style sheets. Script.css is all those things that we want to apply to the page anytime that you're going to see it, no matter what styles people prefer. You're always going to, in this case, going to want to have a white background, black text with certain size margins and padding. Additionally, you're going to want to fix the size of your type buttons so that the one that says it's small sans is always in small sans, and the one that says it's in large serif is always in larger serif. And all of this part is here because we don't want it to change, no matter what style the user wants to see. This part is fixed. Here's sans style. Not much to it. It's just saying we want to be this font size, these fonts for all of these elements. And serif style is identical. It just is a little bit larger and has serif fonts. So as usual, the interesting stuff is in the JavaScript file. This is a fairly lengthy JavaScript, so I've left most of a skeleton in here. What's important when we start off is we've set not just the window.onload, but also the window.onUnload. Onload calls the initStyle function. OnUnload calls the unloadStyle function. And this is because not only are we changing the style, we are also saving the style that the user picked into a cookie, so that the next time when they come back, it will automatically come up in that style. Once you change it, it is set that way forever from then on. You can always change it back, but they don't have to think about it every time they come to the site. If they want it in gigantically sized font and some font that you don't ever want to see, they can see that, set it once, never have to think about it again, and nobody else has to look at it. So I'm going to do some copying and pasting here because there's a lot of code. Let's start off with initStyle. A lot of the code that you're going to be seeing here should look fairly familiar from our cookies exercises. If you're not familiar with them, you might want to go back and review those because I'm not going to go into too much depth here. We're going to set this cookie equal to cookie_val style. That means that there should be a style cookie. If there isn't, we'll handle that later on. If there is one, it's going to be saved in this cookie. If this cookie, so there was a style value, then we're going to set the title variable to be this cookie. Otherwise, we're going to set title to be get preferred style sheet, which is the default style sheet. And that's going to get the name of the default style sheet. And then we're going to call set active style sheet and pass it title. If you remember, the style sheets links in the HTML had titles of default and serif. So title is either going to be default or serif. Now we've pasted in more of a style. We're going to set the all buttons array by looking for all the input tags in our document. And we're going to loop through all the buttons. If any of them are of type button, we're going to set the onClick to trigger the set active style sheet function. So that way, the only buttons we have are those two in the navigation area that change the style sheet, and this way we set them to do that. And so that's initStyle. If we have a stored style in a cookie, we set the active style sheet to that. Otherwise, we set the active style sheet to the default or preferred style sheet. Now we're going to go into unloadStyle. Here's our unloadStyle function. All it's doing is writing out a cookie, so this should all look very familiar based on what we've done before. We have our variable. Expire date is a new date. Expire date.setYear is set to expire date.getFullYear plus 1. So we're saying it's going to expire a year from today. And then we set document.cookie. Cookie name is style. Its value is whatever is returned from getActiveStyleSheet. And we'll be looking at that in a bit. Path is /, and the expiration date is our expire date.toGMT string. Now we're looking at getPreferredStyleSheet. Set up a couple variables, this link and rel attribute, and then we go and look for all the links on our web page. So links found is get elements by tag name link. And then we loop through that. This link equals links found sub I. Rel attribute gets whatever rel is on that particular link, which is either going to be style sheet, which we can go back actually to the HTML and look at. It's either going to be style sheet or alternate style sheet. So if we find the word style and we don't find the letters alt, so we don't find alternate style sheet, and this link.getAttribute has a style And this link.getAttribute title has a value, which means that there really is a title attribute on the link. Then we say, okay, it's got a title, it's a style, it doesn't say alternate, this must be the default or the preferred style sheet. So we return this link.getAttribute title, which is going to be default in this case. Otherwise, if there is no preferred style sheet, we return quote, quote, but that should not ever happen. Now we're looking at getActiveStyleSheet. GetActiveStyleSheet says that we need to find out what style sheet are we currently on. This is called when we are doing the on-unload, when we're leaving the page. We want to know what style that they've currently been looking at. Set up some variables, this link. Links found is all the links on the page. Loop through them again. This link equals links found sub I. If this link.getAttribute rel.indexOfStyle is greater than -1, so this one's called style, and it has a title and not this link disabled. So we want to find the active style sheet, and we want to find the active style sheet that has a title attribute, because that's going to be the one that's currently displayed on the page. When we find that, we return this link.getAttribute title. If we don't find one at all, we return quote, quote, the empty string, which should never happen, but that's just to be safe. Here's the first part of setActiveStyleSheet. It's passed a value in, which is the title of the style sheet that we want to load. Set up some new variables, this link and title, and links found again is all the links on the page. If we're passing a value in, and the value we passed in is a string, then we set title to be the inval. Otherwise, we set title to be inval.target.id. It's all because different browsers do different things, but this way we know that we are getting the current value of the title, which is what we want. Else, we're going to set title to window.event.sourceElement.id, and that's going to grab the ID off of the button, because the button can trigger setActiveStyleSheet as well. Here's our last part of setActiveStyleSheet. We go through this loop, looking at linksFound.length, setting this link. If this link.getAttribute rel.indexOfStyle is greater than -1, it's a style sheet, and it has an attribute title, we start off by saying this link.disabled equals true. So we're turning it off. However, if this link.getAttribute title equals the title we're looking for, then we set disabled equal to false, or we are enabling it. So you could have half a dozen different possible style sheets on this page and let people pick any one of them. And this will turn all of them off and then turn just the one they want on again. And that's all there is to this. The only other part down here hasn't changed from places we've seen it elsewhere, which is the function cookieVal, which, given a cookie name, looks for a cookie with that name and returns back the value of that cookie. So let's save our JavaScript and go back to the browser and reload our page. And now we can change the font, big to small and back again. And what's nice is that if we reload the page, it stays at this larger font until we decide we want it small again, and then we reload the page, it stays that size. So everybody gets what they want. This is a handy little widget to add to your site for accessibility reasons, and it just makes it a much more pleasant reading experience.